Hello and welcome into this week's episode of the Everyday Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Hagele. Today's episode, we're going to talk about losing weight or building muscle. Ultimately, body recomposition. Body recomposition is a widely abused talking point within the fitness world, within the fitness space, the nutrition space. People will often ask or discuss and talk through why you should focus your efforts on losing weight, losing body fat before you build muscle. Or should you build muscle to lose body fat better? I think a lot of people are starting to get on board with managing expectations of what a bulk actually is and doing things in a definitely more informed way. They are using the evidence in a way that's allowing them to optimize how much muscle mass they are able to build while still maintaining their health, while still maintaining a certain level of leanness. There's been a lot of work done in the protein space, in the hypertrophy space, to basically say, like, you don't need to live in these extremes. You don't need to have a bulk phase for 6 months out of the year and then a cut phase. You don't need to feel slow and inflamed and just miserable because you're pounding food, you're shoveling food in, right? And then on the other end, you don't need this crash diet. You don't need to cut calories super low. You don't need to go and stretch a cutout for 24, 26, 52 weeks. That's something that's going to nuke your performance. It's going to impair your ability to train hard. And then at the end of the day, leave you smaller, weaker, and just, hungry. And so modern research is pretty clear in that you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time if you follow the correct blueprint. So this episode, we're going to try to break that down into 3 pillars: a slow, controlled fat loss, resistance training, and adequate protein intake to help just support your physiology while you're in this caloric deficit. And so let's get into that here and start by talking through why this model exists. So as I mentioned, the bulk and then cut approach didn't come out of nowhere. Okay, bodybuilding, still to this day, right? The goal is always mass. How much muscle can you build? Can you get as big as possible? And then diet down, whittle down the calories, whittle down the body fat, get to these extreme levels. Enhanced athletes, okay, chemically enhanced athletes, their physiology changes enough that they're allowed to get by with more of a sloppy bulk and still be able to keep their muscle during cuts. They are taking exogenous hormones to allow their muscles and their hormones to stay elevated so they can still cut very drastically, but maintain a lot of the muscle that they can also build easier because of the enhancements. And more muscle and mass sports like football, rugby, more of these power sports, we've seen this firsthand, and they push guys, especially high school, especially early college, to just, get as big as possible, put on as much weight as you can. Some coaches, some circles, they don't care where that weight is coming from. They want you to just get big. They want you to put on 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 50 pounds. If an undersized linebacker walks into their winter training at, let's say, 205 pounds, and the coach wanted him to get to 225, 235, he was getting pushed into that eat everything that isn't nailed down plan. The seafood diet, where if you see food, you need to eat it. But there's a problem with these approaches. You gain adipose tissue, you gain fat way faster than you can gain muscle. And the faster that you gain weight, the worse that muscle to fat ratio becomes. Basically, you have more fat than you do muscle. And when you then cut aggressively, you lose muscle very fast. The body doesn't like to have a lot of muscle. And so we need to do everything in our powers, nutritionally and training-wise, to maintain and hold on to that muscle mass. And so the net result of all of this is that most people will just ultimately end up spinning their wheels, and where they bulk too fast, they gain a lot of weight, and then they've got to cut harder, they've got to cut more aggressively, and they end up right about where they started. So here's the key message, is that you don't need a bulk phase and you don't need a cut phase in the traditional sense. Instead, especially for the everyday athlete, you need a smart and sustained evidence-based plan. So we're going to walk through 3 recommendations that are backed by some of the best researchers that we have and studies that have been done on athletes who have successfully lost fat while gaining muscle. And so that first pillar that we talked about is slowing down the rate of weight loss. Okay, this is the make it or break it piece. The data is really simple when it comes to this, and that is that the more aggressively you cut calories, you cut energy, you cut food and intake, then the more muscle mass you lose and the worse your performance becomes. Carbohydrates are low, protein is low, energy is low. You're going to feel horrible in the gym. You're not going to have glycogen in the gym to be able to still train hard. So performance for the everyday athlete who wants to be able to perform on top of looking good, that's going to tank, okay? One of the best studies out there is by Garth et al. It's a 2011 paper, and they compared rapid or fast weight loss at about 1.4% of body weight per week to a slower, more sustainable weight loss at around 0.7% of body weight per week. Of course, we cut calories, right? Both groups are going to lose fat, and both groups did lose fat. We saw that. The study worked. But only the slow group was able to gain muscle. They gained about 2% lean mass, and this is what was done in elite athletes while they were dieting, while they were in a caloric deficit. On top of that, right, their strength and their power numbers actually improved more, which is fascinating, right? They lost weight and they were still able to build muscle and maintain or build strength. So the important part of all this, the interpretation of this, right, is to achieve the fast rate of loss. The caloric deficit needed to be nearly 800 calories per day for these groups. The slow group, on the other hand, was closer to about 450 calories a day. And so again, that's almost double, right? If we get into that. So the human body doesn't like these deep deficits. Okay, you push hard, and the following elements of your performance are going to tank, right? Your strength and your power. Your recovery is going to be slower because you don't have the nutrients and the energy that you need to be able to recover after training. Your immune function, your ability to be more resilient to getting sick drops as well. Your training intensity inside the gym, you can't train as hard. Over the course of months, right, your will to live gets harder, right? There's certain elements to where you're in this sustained caloric deficit. You don't want to do things. You don't want to get up off the couch and grab the remote to change the TV channel. I've been there. I've done bodybuilding shows where I've been in these deep cuts, these deep deficits, and just getting up out of the car and going into the grocery store is like the worst thing in the world because you don't want to move. Your body is trying to hold on and fight for everything that's left. And so the other element to all this is you lose muscle mass. Your muscle mass is going to drop because you're not eating enough to be able to retain that lean mass. And so, end of the day, right, slower loss is going to equal better outcomes. Faster loss is going to equal worse outcomes when it comes to performance, when it comes to body composition. So if you're an everyday athlete, your biggest goal is to be able to perform well, but then also look good, feel athletic, maybe run well, or have a really good fitness and conditioning base. And then be present for your kids. That slower deficit is going to win every single time. If you don't have energy because you're eating so few calories, you're not going to have energy to get up and play with your kids, to be able to go to the ball fields, to be able to go to the pumpkin patch in the fall, go to the beach in the summer, right? You're not going to have any energy to do these things. And so slower weight loss is going to win out every single time. So now let's look at pillar 2. This is training. And this is specifically resistance training, okay? One thing I always preach, how I program, how I work, the people that I work with, we always are going to emphasize resistance training. Okay, muscle mass doesn't stick around unless you give it a reason to. So you have to apply that stimulus and that stressor to be able to retain lean muscle mass. And so an energy deficit are those conditions where your body would love to burn protein for fuel. And resistance training is the signal that tells your body, hey, let's not touch this tissue. We need it. We've been stressed because of external resistance. We need this to be able to continue to live and perform and do the things that our bodies are meant to do. So the style of resistance training doesn't truly matter as much as people want it to. Okay, here we don't need to get fancy. I'm not going to debate what the best training split is, if we should do body part splits or if we should do, more tempo work or different types of periodization. I'm not going to get into that. Let's look at the big picture recommendations, and that is 2 to 3 resistance training sessions every single week, at least 2 to 3 sets per movement. And we're looking at 8 to 12 repetitions, with those last 1 to 2 reps being very challenging. The movements patterns are all covered with our squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, right? This alone is going to dramatically change the composition of the weight that you lose. Okay, whenever we lose weight, right, we always are going to lose a percentage of fat. Ideally, that percentage of fat is somewhere in the 60 to 80% range. We're also going to lose muscle. And that ideally is going to stay in that 10, 20, 30% range. So again, slowing down our deficits, including resistance training. If you want to be able to get lean and muscular as an everyday athlete, you need to lift weights while you're dieting, period. End of story. Resistance training is a must in this scenario. And then pillar 3 to round this out is getting adequate protein intake. So your body doesn't care about aesthetics, doesn't care about how much muscle you have or how lean you are. It cares about surviving. And so from a nutritional standpoint, protein is that easiest lever to be able to pull. And it's the first one that a lot of people tend to ignore when they're dieting. So unlike carbs and unlike fats, your body doesn't have a real mechanism to store protein. If you're dieting, your caloric energy intake is going to drop, and so is protein, unless you're intentional with it. Now, if you're under-eating protein while sustaining an energy deficit, your body's going to break down its own muscle to be able to meet your daily amino acid needs. There's certain amino acids that our body needs to be able to function, not just from a muscle standpoint, but from a health and from a heartbeat and from a daily activity level. There's certain needs that are needed here. So there are 2 powerhouse studies in this space that have been done to kind of look at high protein diets. First one is from 2005, Layman et al., great researcher, and higher protein diets produced better fat loss, better insulin, glucose, and lipid improvements, and better body composition. And even better results were attained whenever exercise was added here. Another study from 2016 by Longland et al., they cut calories by 40%. So this is way beyond what we just talked about, but it shows, right? They cut calories by 40%. They trained 6 days a week. One group had 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein, and they lost fat, but they gained no muscle. So 1.2 grams per kilogram. The other group had 2.4 grams per kilogram of protein. So that 2.4 grams per kilogram, to do some conversions here, that's slightly above the traditional 1 gram per pound of body weight that we will often see. That group lost more fat and they gained over a kilogram of muscle while in a caloric deficit, a 40% calorie deficit. So that right there is that recomposition model. So the daily protein intake sweet spot, this has been kind of confirmed through the International Society of Sport Nutrition in their position stand. This aligns very closely with that. And that is about 1.6 to 2.4 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. Guess what's right in the sweet spot? 1 gram per pound. Okay, 1 gram per pound of body weight. That is my general recommendation. It's easy. In America, we understand pounds way better than kilograms. And so telling my clients who live in the United States to intake 1 gram per pound of body weight seals the deal. Most everyday athletes are going to thrive right there. So a 180-pound male, you're looking at 180 grams a day. 130-pound female, you're looking at 130 grams of protein per day. A 250-pound male, you're looking at 250 grams of protein per day. It's easy, sweet spot right there. So, to round this out, should you pursue weight loss first and then build muscle? The answer is no. You should pursue both fat loss and muscle gain at the same time by doing so slowly, intentionally, and with a plan. Unless you have a meet or a race, or you're diving into the deep end and you have a bodybuilding show coming up, there is zero upside to forcing rapid fat loss. So do both at the same time and do both in a sustainable and slow, consistent pattern. So now, from a practical application standpoint, what does this look like in a real life perspective? And so for the listeners, for dads, busy professionals, hybrid athletes, this blueprint is fairly straightforward. And that is eat in a moderate calorie deficit. To lose about a pound a week, you need to be in about a 500 calorie per day deficit. You can even shrink that a little bit if you really wanted to stretch this out to just go 250 calories a day. From a lifting perspective, 2 to 3 days per week, make sure you're getting 1 gram per pound of protein. You're hitting daily walking. You're keeping your conditioning, your zone 2 aerobic work consistent. And you're tracking scale trends over the course of weeks, not days. One thing I like to do is actually weigh every single day. If any of my nutrition clients, myself included, we weigh every single day and we take that average over the course of 7 days. Because there's going to be natural ebbs and flows. But if we look at what happened in the last 7 days and we're seeing that the scale is going down, that means we're losing weight. Doesn't mean that I just happened to eat a few more carbs yesterday, maybe happened to train a little bit harder and I'm holding on to more water. Ideally, we want to lose about 0.5 to 0.7% of our total body weight over the course of a week. And we'll do this for 8 to 16 weeks and we'll kind of watch what happens. Now, you can get into diet breaks, you can get into refeeds, but this is a very just kind of blanket blueprint that's going to deliver better fat loss long term, more muscle retention, or in best case scenario, muscle mass gain. You're going to still be able to train hard. You're going to be able to have better energy levels. You're going to be able to adhere to this long term and make sustainable lifestyle improvements. And you're ultimately going to develop a body that looks more athletic and not dieted down, not flat, and not kind of washed through. So to wrap up, right, old school bodybuilding, the bulking, the cutting, that works for enhanced athletes, for the pro bodybuilders, maybe the young football players who really need to be able to put on extra weight and jump up weight classes, right? But it doesn't work for the everyday athlete who wants to get strong, who wants to be lean, and who wants to be healthier. So the science, the physiology, the results, they're all clear that slow fat loss is going to win, along with consistent resistance training and higher protein intakes. That's how you're going to build more muscle mass and lose more fat at the exact same time. So with that, I appreciate you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Everyday Strength Podcast. If you're not already, make sure you're subscribed to the Performance Edge Network. That is a network where you get access to topics more related to this, to protein, to nutrition, to strength. You also get my free weekly newsletter delivered straight to your email every single week. If you're listening on Spotify, podcast, or YouTube, make sure that you leave a comment and a review. Those always help to push this information to more people. I appreciate you tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Keep training hard. Take care. And we'll see you next time.